If fate means you to lose, give him a good fight anyhow. Welcome to The Cellar. Lynn Fleming was a 77-year-old woman from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. After retiring, Lynn finally made the decision to move to Florida, something she had always dreamed of doing. She would end up moving to Ellenton, Florida. Ellenton is an unincorporated community in Manatee County, Florida. The population there is around 4,100 residents. Ellenton is part of the North Port, Bradenton, Sarasota, Florida metropolitan area. Life in Florida was everything Lynn hoped it would be. The sunshine, the beach, the shopping. Lynn was truly living her best life, and that joy would continue on for another 3 to 4 years. In June of 2019, Lynn's son, wife, and their 2 children decided to make the long drive south from Pittsburgh. The drive was long, but the family was excited to spend a week in Florida with Lynn. On June 14, 2019, the group would head out to visit Coquina Beach. Coquina Beach is a 22-acre beach located on Anna Maria Island. Coquina Beach is home to Gulfside Park and the family-friendly Coquina Baywalk. From what's reported, the family spent the day at the beach enjoying the sights, the sun, and the water. At some point, while Lynn was walking through the water, she would step in a small dip in the ground. Lynn would stumble and bump her leg. She would end up with a 3/4 inch cut located on her left shin. After exiting the water and checking the wound, a lifeguard would be called over. The lifeguard was very diligent and helped clean the wound out and provided a bandage for Lynn's leg. Following that incident, the day would carry on, and Lynn and the family would even go out later that very night with friends. The following morning, Lynn's son checked on the wound and proceeded to clean it up once again, applying a fresh clean bandage when he was done. Following this, Lynn's son and the family would begin packing their car as their vacation had come to an end and they had a long trek ahead of them back to Pittsburgh. Lynn's son and family would soon say goodbye and head off, and Lynn would go back to her quiet, peaceful, retired life. Later that afternoon, Lynn's son received a phone call from his mother expressing that she was now in some pain. The longer the weekend went on, the more Lynn's leg hurt in the area of the cut that she had suffered. By the time Lynn woke up Sunday morning, her leg was red and swollen badly. She soon traveled to an urgent care facility. Doctors there would provide Lynn with a tetanus shot and a round of antibiotics, hoping that would do the trick and get Lynn back on track. On Monday, June 17th, a friend of Lynn's went and picked up her antibiotic prescription. They then traveled over to Lynn's house and proceeded to knock on her front door. There was no answer, and after waiting a moment, this friend proceeded to enter Lynn's home to see if she was all right. They looked in her living room and all throughout her house, before finally locating her on her bedroom floor. Lynn was unconscious, and her entire left shin had turned black in color. An ambulance was immediately called, and Lynn was rushed to the nearby hospital. As the doctors worked to figure out what was wrong, Lynn's son was soon contacted. He and his wife quickly rushed back to Florida, going as fast as they could get there to be by his mother's side. By the time they arrived, Lynn was on life support. She had suffered 2 strokes and complete kidney failure. To put it bluntly, her entire body had quickly gone septic. As Thursday rolled around, Lynn's condition did not improve. She would pass on while her son held her hand that very same day. So what happened? How did a small cut end up taking Lynn's life in less than a week? Well, it turns out Lynn developed necrotizing fasciitis, which is also known as flesh-eating disease. Necrotizing fasciitis is a bacterial infection that affects the tissue under your skin called fascia. It's normally treated with antibiotics and surgery to remove damaged tissue. Lynn underwent numerous surgeries and antibiotics, but by the time she was brought to the hospital, too much damage had already been done. Quick intervention is vital when dealing with the bacteria. You'll require exploratory surgery to confirm the diagnosis. Surgery is also required to remove dead tissue, often taking multiple surgeries to control the infection and remove all of the dead tissue. Even with an early diagnosis, 1 out of every 3 people end up dying from the disease, often due to massive organ failure throughout the body. Every summer in the US, as the waters along the coastline warm up, cases of the bacteria start to grow. The bacteria typically thrives in water with temperatures that stay above 55 degrees year-round, leading to numerous cases throughout the southern portion of the Atlantic coastline. For Lynn, an amazing day out with her family tragically turned deadly all through one seemingly innocuous cut. I hope that in sharing her story, I'm able to spread more awareness about the dangers of the disease. Stay vigilant and don't ignore the warning signs, as quick and early diagnosis may be the difference between life and death. My deepest condolences go out to Lyn Fleming, as well as all her family and friends. Now, this next story happens to have another woman named Lyn Fleming within it. It was Tuesday, May 16th, 2023. 68-year-old Lyn Fleming of Beaufort, Georgia, was riding in the passenger seat of a Toyota Highlander as it traveled along Interstate 75 near Dalton, about 90 miles north of the city of Atlanta. To give some further context, Beaufort is a city located in both northern Gwinnett County and northern Georgia, with a small portion of it extending north into Hall County. The city is considered a suburb of the Atlanta metropolitan area. From my research, Interstate 75 runs from as far north as the Great Lakes to as south as Miami, Florida. It ends just before Miami, to be precise. The part of I-75 that Lynn was traveling throughout on this day took her near the city of Dalton. Dalton is located just off I-75 within the foothills of the Blue Ridge Mountains in northwest Georgia. Dalton is the second largest city in northwest Georgia, just after Rome. It was just before 2 p.m. as the car Lynn sat in began approaching exit 326, Carbondale Road, Dalton, Georgia. The vehicle was driving in the southbound lane, and Lynn was conversing with the driver of the vehicle. Whatever happened next, Lynn never saw coming. A winch bar, which is basically a pipe-like tool that is used for tightening cargo on flatbed trailers, would come crashing through the passenger side windshield of the Toyota Highlander. The pipe would instantly impale Lynn through her neck. She never even had a moment's notice to react to what was about to happen. The driver of the vehicle would immediately pull off to the side of the road and call for help. Emergency services would soon be called to the scene. A Life Force helicopter would land on the highway, and medical personnel tried to save Lynn's life. It wouldn't take medical personnel long to declare Lynn gone at the scene. The injury and blood loss was just too severe for the 68-year-old mother and grandmother to overcome. I did some more digging and found that an astonishing 1,182 vehicle passengers died on the state roads of Georgia in 2021 alone, with over 1,700 traffic fatalities in 2020. That's just for the state of Georgia. If anything, the story just goes to show that sometimes, when it's your time, it's your time. I've learned while covering stories within my Horrible Fates series that you truly may never see what's coming to end your life. And I'm not saying to live life in fear, but always be aware of your surroundings no matter the situation. For life is fragile, and life can cease within mere moments, and you may never be none the wiser. As always, my deepest condolences go out to Lyn Fleming, as well as all her family and friends. Now, there isn't a ton of background information on this next story, but I'll do my best to relay what happened. Khita Hicks was a 20-year-old woman from Olive Hill, Kentucky. Olive Hill is a small city that sits along Tigard's Creek within Carter County, Kentucky. The population is listed as being around 1,600 residents in total. According to reports, it was August of 2010, and Khita Hicks was out driving in her T-top convertible on Kentucky Route 519, just north of Moorhead. It's not clear how long she had been driving at the time, but at some point, Khita and the passenger decided to switch places. Instead of pulling the vehicle over and getting out, they figured they would swap spots right then and there while driving at 70 miles per hour. As I stated, the vehicle was a T-top. For those that don't know, a T-top is an automobile roof with a removable panel on each side of a rigid bar running from the center of one structural bar between pillars to the center of the next structural bar. I will show a picture for reference. Khita would stand up first. She lifted her foot and attempted to step and slide to her right past her friend. As she did, her foot inadvertently hit the steering wheel. This caused the car to veer off course, and as it did, her friend immediately noticed and grabbed for the steering wheel. As the car veered left, Khita's friend yanked right. The car immediately corrected, but as it did, the momentum hurled Khita right out of the car and straight into a guardrail on the side of the road. Emergency services were called to the scene, and Khita was transported to the University of Kentucky Hospital. She would undergo emergency surgery, but doctors were unable to save her life. This story once again goes to show how fragile life is and how one silly decision can lead to your ultimate demise. My condolences go out to Khita as well as all her family and friends. It was June 7th, 2016, and 23-year-old Colin Scott, a psychology graduate from Pacific University, had just traveled from Portland, Oregon to Yellowstone National Park to meet up with his sister Sable. Colin had just recently graduated, and after speaking to his sister, the pair had decided to take a day trip to the infamous Yellowstone Park. After the pair met up, they drove around Yellowstone, eventually finding a place to park their vehicle that wasn't far from the Norris Geyser Basin. Norris Geyser Basin is the hottest, oldest, and most dynamic of Yellowstone's thermal areas. The pair would soon exit their vehicle and begin walking around, checking out the numerous sights to be seen. At some point on their adventure, they deviated from the route that traveled through the thermal areas within the basin. The pair at the time had one thing on their mind. They wanted to go hot potting. To give some context, hot potting is the practice of soaking within a natural hot spring. Yellowstone has many places where people will travel to take part in the practice, but there's a great danger in exploring within restricted areas. Colin and Sable continued their trek, traveling hundreds of feet up a hill near one of the many hot springs. At the time, Sable had her phone out and was filming the pair's exploits. According to reports, the video shows the pair deviate from the path and travel near a hot pool. Colin then kneels down to examine the temperature of the hot spring. It's at this point that Colin slips and plunges face first into the water. Colin's sister would immediately try to save her brother, but the moment the skin on her body made contact with the water, she became burned badly. Under normal circumstances, the water at Norris Geyser reaches around 199 degrees Fahrenheit or 93 degrees Celsius. On this particular day, the water had reached an unbelievably high temperature of 212 degrees Fahrenheit or 100 degrees Celsius. Unable to help her brother, Sable attempted to call for help, but cell service within the area is non-existent, and thus there was not a thing Sable could do for her brother. Sable began running from the scene, eventually locating the Ranger Museum, where she was able to alert someone as to what had transpired. Officials at the park would be notified, and they immediately traveled to the site of where Colin had fallen in. When they arrived, they found the remains of Colin's head, upper torso, and hands. With the hot springs being as hot as they were on this day, they were unable to even attempt to recover his remains. Officials had to wait until the following day, and by the time they returned, Colin's body was gone. From what's reported, the acidic nature of the pool, combined with the extreme temperature, simply dissolved Scott's body. Officials were able to recover a few things from within the hot springs. His wallet and flip-flops had survived, but that was all that was left of Colin Scott. I can only imagine the emotional scar that Colin's sister Sable must carry with her every day. A fun-filled trip with her brother turned to absolute tragedy. This is not the first time I've covered a story about the Yellowstone hot springs. From what I read, at least 22 people have perished within the springs of Yellowstone since 1890. Please let this be a reminder not to wander into restricted areas within the park. My deepest condolences go out to Colin Scott, his sister Sable, as well as all his family and friends. Thank you all for tuning in to another episode. If you enjoy the content, please hit that like and subscribe button. It helps the channel continue to grow. Also, if you want to make sure you don't ever miss a new upload, you can turn on the bell notifications after you subscribe. In the description box below, you'll find a link to my merch store and a link to the Cellar Dwellers membership tier for the channel. If you're interested, please take a moment to check those things out. If you'd like to submit your own scary story or any kind of story recommendation, you can do so using the email I have linked in the description box below. As always, I do all my research, writing, recording, and editing for the channel myself, so anything that you do to support the channel is greatly appreciated. And until next time, I will see you all again as we head back into the cellar.